Hey there, this is Karin from Teach Beside Me, and I wanted to jump on today and talk to you about choosing a homeschool curriculum. This is one of the biggest questions that I get on my website about homeschooling, and so I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about it today and how I've gone about making my choice over the years, because I think that's one of the most daunting things when you start homeschooling is thinking, what do I choose to give my kids the best option for homeschooling? So just a little background, I have been homeschooling for, I think it's 11 years now. And so I have, over the course of those 11 years, really tried a lot of different types and styles of curriculum and a lot of different styles of homeschooling. And so I've learned a lot about the different ones, and I've read nearly every homeschool book I could get my hands on over the years as well, all the ones I could find at my library as well as many I ordered online. So I've got a lot of background there in choosing a curriculum. So it's given me kind of a vision of what I want and what I think could be the best choices for me and my family. So each year I typically spend a few hours planning out the curriculum that we're going to use for the following year. And I research books and I research math programs and all these different things to really make an informed decision that year. And the last few years we've actually stuck with the same thing a few times in a row, and I can share what that is as well, but mostly I want to give you the tools so that you can make your own choices and not just follow blindly what I'm doing, but make the best choice for you and your family. So we know homeschooling is a hard choice, and it may excite you, but it also may panic you, or maybe both. You might feel overwhelmed, you might feel panicked, and all of that is a little stressful and crazy. But I want you to start by thinking of what you want your homeschool to look like. So I think that's tip number one. I mean, I know that's tip number one, but I think that that's a really important tip for you to think through first. So you've chosen this path. What in your mind does it look like? Because once you choose that, or once you visualize that, that's going to really help you make the decision on what your curriculum choice is going to be. Are you wanting to create the school atmosphere at home? If so, you're going to want a very structured curriculum. Are you wanting to throw that whole structure out of the window and stay outside all day long, be very nature focused, or let the kids direct the learning atmosphere? If so, those are going to direct your homeschool style in another way. Do you have a ton of time to teach them? Or are you going to be busy? Maybe you work online or from home, or maybe you work part-time somewhere outside of the home and you only have a limited amount of time. All of that is going to really play in to your choice of what style of curriculum you're going to be using for your family. There's so many different ways to homeschool, but you're going to need to decide what way will work for you and what's going to bring you and your family the most joy through this process. So I'm going to help guide you through that choice. Your main reasons for homeschooling. Think of that as well, because those things are going to also really help you in making your choice of your curriculum. A lot of people want to homeschool because they want to travel. So maybe you focus on minimal supplies and all digital curriculum or things like that. And maybe you focus your learning on the places you visit. If you're really unsure of what that's going to look like, if you're just starting out, that's okay too, because the next tip I'm going to give you is going to help you with that part a little bit. But I do think it's really important to think this through and really get an image of what you envision your homeschool to be like. So then you're going to need to determine goals for each child. If you're schooling multiple children, some kids are going to need different things than others. If you have maybe someone with learning disabilities, or someone who's an advanced learner, or whatever it may be, it's going to be a little different for each child either way. So map out your goals for each child and decide, does this kid need a more rigorous education, or does this kid need something that is less structured because they don't work well with the structured atmosphere? And then take some time to write these things down. Write down your homeschooling vision and the goals that you have for your family through homeschooling and the goals that you have for these individual children. And it's really important to think those things through, and doing that and writing that out is going to help you put all of it into perspective to make a really good choice. So tip number 2 is determine what kind of learners you are teaching. how do your kids learn best? Do you have a child that's a very hands-on learner or a visual learner? Some kids really need a lot of visuals and a lot of tactile interaction while they're learning, whereas others really prefer more, book study and maybe some reasoning skills and, less of the hands-on stuff. You are going to know your kids best, and you're going to know from the years you've spent with them, teaching them and raising them, that what's going to be the best way for them to learn. And because of that, you're going to be able to help choose the style of curriculum that will help them learn best. So you're going to want to take a little bit of time to kind of figure that out. And it may vary per child as well, because we're not all the same. We're all born a little bit different from one another, which is what makes this world so beautiful. So figure out their learning style, and once you do that, that's going to really play into the type of curriculum you choose as well. Certain styles of teaching are going to be more hands-on than others. There's a lot of math programs that really use a lot of manipulatives and tools like that, or there's other ones that are just workbook focused and writing focused, and so that's going to vary depending on your type of learner. Some kids really don't want all those extra little toys and tools to learn their math. Some just want to sit down and get the problems done. And some like a lot more writing and reading. Some styles of teaching require a lot more writing and reading, and some do not. And so you're going to want to look at those or determine those for your kids. Tip number 3 is to choose a homeschool style. Now here's where all of the prep work comes into focus. So I'm going to tell you about a couple of the different styles of homeschooling. You may have already visualized what you want your homeschool to look like, so you might hear one that just really clicks and feels right for you and your family. And that's why I wanted you to take that time to really visualize it. So don't feel pressure that you have to conform to a certain style. I remember feeling a lot of pressure that I had to do it exactly the way it was written in the book that I read about that style, and to really stick with it. But for me, I've never really been able to fit with one style. A lot of people call that an eclectic homeschooler. I guess that's what I am, and that's okay as well. But knowing about these different styles is going to help you kind of nail down just a general way of what you want your homeschooling to look like. So if one of these speaks to you as I'm going through, go with it. And as you experiment with that style, maybe you can pull out the things that you do love about it and then put aside the things that you don't. And that's totally fine, because that's the beauty of homeschooling, is that you're going to tailor it to fit your teaching style as well as your child's learning style. All right, so the first one I want to touch on is called Charlotte Mason, which I love Charlotte Mason's style. She was an educator in England in the 1800s, and she had a really large following of her teaching methods. They include nature journaling, copywork, dictation, very literature-rich learning environment where you learn from original source books and books that bring the subjects to life. And it's a really beautiful style of learning. And I use a lot of her methods in my homeschooling, but I do not strictly follow the Charlotte Mason style. So I highly recommend reading some of her books and gleaning from her ideas, because there's some great stuff on there. A couple of websites you can look at to learn from are Ambleside Online and Simply Charlotte Mason. Those are two websites that kind of give you some curriculum outlines and will help you figure it out. If you are a busy mom or a part-time working mom or a mom that can't really sit and focus with your kids a lot, there are online school options, and a lot of places, websites, you can go on and they'll do the whole thing for you. So there's K-12 and there's Time for Learning and there's Connections Academy, Easy Peasy. I don't know if that does it all for you. If it's mom intensive, I've never used that, but I know that the curriculum's all online there that you can use as well. And there's websites that'll give just individual classes also. So you don't have to do the full thing online, but you can pick, maybe I want a literature class taught online or something like that. There's a lot of options available for that as well. There's some huge benefits to that because you don't have to do the planning or the grading. We actually use an online math program. We use teaching textbooks and have also used CTC math for a few years in the past, and both of those are not mom intensive at all, but you watch a video and you learn from an online instructor and do the problems online, and they do the grading and they do all of that for you. So it takes away a lot of the pressure and the burden from you. Another style that I love and have taken a lot of stuff from is the classical education. Classical education has a three-part process of training the mind called the trivium. And they have different stages of learning, grammar and logic and rhetoric. And it's a more rigorous and scholarly style of schooling that's very language focused. And the book that I read to teach me about this is called The Well-Trained Mind. And I loved that book. And that was one of the earliest ones that I read in my homeschooling journey, and gained so much knowledge from that. So it's a great resource. And I know there's a lot of other resources as well, but that's a good starting point for you. Okay, another style of homeschooling that is very popular and common to be used is the unit study homeschooling. And this is teaching around themed topics. It is typically a hands-on learning style with lots of projects and activities all based around one topic. For instance, Egypt. So you're studying ancient Egypt for history. You do art projects based on ancient Egypt. You read books about it. You do math focused on ancient Egypt. All of that would be revolving around a single topic. It's a lot of fun. Even your language arts and your writing can be centered around that theme as well. And a lot of people really like that. One website that I have used for this is Homeschool in the Woods. And they have some really amazing units that you can use to do unit studying. And we've used some of those in the past, and they're tons of fun. I love them a lot. Another, you've just got traditional schooling. So basically that's just recreating a school atmosphere in your home. You can set up desks. You can have scheduled times where you do each subject, textbooks and worksheets. It's a very school atmosphere. And a lot of people, when they're just starting, feel most comfortable with this because it's what you're used to. And that's okay. If that's where you feel most comfortable starting out, then start out there, and that's just fine. And maybe you stay that way. Maybe that's what fits best for you. Typically, I've seen most homeschoolers may start that way, but after a while, they lose a lot of the traditional schooling elements and start doing things in a new way, because it's just kind of how it goes. When you're doing it out of your home, it's never going to look exactly like school. And I think that if you expect it to, you may often get frustrated when it does not. Another method is unschooling, and this is a child-led learning process where kids are given options and resources to guide them, and they choose what most interests them. It's more real-life learning than formal lessons, and there's typically not really a formal lesson or curriculum or textbooks, but topics that they want to learn about, they study about. They get books about that, or mom fills the home with educational resources and activities, and the kids choose bits and pieces as they go along. And this is a good fit for many homeschoolers. It's also a good fit for a lot of people that are trying to pull their kids out of a toxic schooling environment. Unschooling may be a really good option for starting out. There's a lot of resources for an all-in-one boxed curriculum set. Now, this is not one method per se, but it is an easy jumping off point for a new homeschooler. And there's a lot of different curriculum companies that will sell you a full set, all done for you, lesson plans, books, all the projects you may need all in one. And this is a really amazing option. They're usually a lot pricier, but if you have the option to spend a little more, this can be a beautiful way to start. So there's a few boxed set curriculums that I'll mention here. And these are kind of the more well-known ones. You've got Sunlight or Beautiful Feet, Memoria Press, Abeka. I'm not sure if I pronounced that one right, but that's a popular one. Christian Light, Alpha Omega, My Father's World, Timberdoodle, Oak Meadow, Bookshark, and Calvert. So those are some of the top ones, and you can also just pick pieces of their curriculum, but those ones will also offer a full package for you. Then you don't have to do any of the planning. It is all done for you, which is a really huge benefit. Okay, we're gonna move on to tip number 4, and tip number 4 is research. Now, once you've nailed down your style of schooling, if any of those kind of spoke to you a little bit, there are more styles you will learn as you start your researching, but those are kind of just a few of the more common and basic ones. But once you've nailed down that style, you're going to want to study resources and websites just focused on that style. And you can do that by, there's a lot of homeschool blogs, there's a lot of websites and a lot of books and resources that you can find. There is so much available for homeschooling now that it honestly can be very overwhelming. And you'll see that as you go along. So just do a little research on the topic that sings, or the style that sings to you most. I have really spent a lot of hours researching different homeschool options, because I really like to know all of my options before I make a choice. So if you're a researcher like me, you may love this part of the process. I kind of enjoyed it. If you're not a researcher, that's okay. Pick one of those and go to someone that's already done the research and just follow their path, and that can help you as you start out. I like to work subject by subject when I'm choosing my curriculum, and math and language arts typically tend to be the ones that are hardest for me to choose. I like to go and read reviews on different math options and curriculum options and just really see all the pros and the cons of each one of those. And there'll be samples, and if you try out different samples or level testing, things like that will really help you as you're making those choices. And that leads me right into tip number 5, which is to read the reviews. When I find something that I think is going to be a good fit, I always start reading reviews. There are websites and curriculum reviews that are a lot of blogs that use reviews as well. And if you read as much as you can, you're going to get a better feel for it, and you'll really understand how it works and the pros and the cons, because everyone's going to share, the good and the bad of it. And so you can learn a lot there. I've done a lot of curriculum reviews on my website on Teach Beside Me that you can find as well if you want to read some of those over there. But I've kind of, not intentionally, but it's become a bit of a hobby to try out as many as possible, more so in years past than in presently. But because I've done a lot of reviews on my website, I've been able to try a lot of things, and that's been a benefit for me, because I've been able to really find what fits and what works well for my kids and for me. It has to fit for mom as well, not just your kids. And sometimes reading all these reviews can be overwhelming, but just know that you don't have to do everything. You don't have to follow what everyone else says. There's no possible way you can read every single book for that first grader on that huge long list that you found. Just pick a few, and it's going to be okay, and it's going to work out, I promise. And one other thing that I think is important to understand is sometimes you'll read a bad review of something and you'll completely disagree with that person, because maybe you tried something and you loved it and this other person tried it and hated it. That doesn't mean that you are wrong. It just means that it worked for you and not for them, and we're different. It's okay. So some important things to consider when you're deciding on a curriculum: is it teacher or student led? So I like to go with things that are more student-led, because that fits better with our homeschooling style. I know myself, and I know that I'm not really good at always getting everything done if it has a lot of involvement on my part, because I'm a busy mom of 4 kids, and I am also a blogger, so that's a part-time pretty much job for me. And I know that life gets crazy and busy, and if it has too much involvement for me, it might get pushed aside. So I really like to choose the ones that my kids can do a lot more on their own. Older kids can do this more easily than younger kids, obviously, but think about that when you're choosing your curriculum. But if you are the type that wants to sit there and wants to teach each subject to your child, then you're gonna wanna look for one that is that style, and that's okay too. As I've said many times, we're all different, we all work differently, so you wanna fit with you and your style. So student learning styles are a really big deal. If you know how your child learns, you're going to be better able to determine through reviews how well it's going to fit. And you can kind of gauge that, if it's a more hands-on curriculum, or if it's more of a, just workbook style curriculum. Cost is going to always be an important factor. Don't overspend from your budget. So if something just looks sparkly and amazing, it may not always be. So if you have something that's working, just stick with it and be okay there, and stop reading all those other reviews and all those other things that tell you that this one's way better. And And if there's something that's more cost effective for your family and you have to go that route, you can make it work still and it'll be okay. The best fit is always going to be what fits in the budget. So then think about how it compares to other similar products. Sometimes it's good to read comparison reviews to see how one curriculum will compare to another. And I will often do this, if I'm stuck on two and I can't decide between the two, I'll go back and forth and will Google it. I'll Google teaching textbooks versus CTC math or, whatever it may be that you're stuck on. I can't decide between these two. Google that, and I bet you somebody has done a review comparing and contrasting the two that you'll be able to find. Or you'll find two separate reviews that'll easily describe it to help you. Some places I go to read reviews, I've mentioned it a lot, Amazon, homeschool.com, homeschoolreviews.com, Kathy Duffy reviews, blogs that I read and trust, and then friends in real life. If you know any local homeschoolers, it's really nice to talk to them, and they can even bring it and show you something if they're using it, because it's so much better to look through something and get a feel for it that way than to just see pictures of it on a website. Ask in local homeschool forums or Facebook groups. It's a good place to connect to other homeschoolers, and they can give you so much information and share their opinions of the things that they've loved and they've used or the things that they've hated. So it's a really great thing to be able to do. Go to local homeschool stores or conventions. There's not very many homeschool stores that I know of, but if you've got one in your area, you're a lucky one. But a convention is a good place to go and look through actual books and things as well. If you have conventions that come to your area in the summer, I would recommend doing that. Okay, moving on to tip number 6, write a master list. Do you know what subjects you're planning to teach for each child? And maybe if you haven't decided that yet, let's get that all solidified. Do they want to do astronomy or physics? Do you want to teach them cursive or print this year? Do you want to incorporate a foreign language or teach them Latin or Greek roots? All of those are things you want to think through. They're not all necessary, but I also really like to take my kids' opinions into consideration when we're making the choices for the year, because they're the ones doing it, so you want it to be something that they will also be excited about in the process. So I usually will start with a list of things that I think will be a good fit for our family. Sometimes one thing will work for one child, but not another. So I go through each child individually and list out the things that I think I want them to learn for that school year. And my master list usually has a lot more than I can realistically teach or use, but it's a good starting point. And then as I research and figure out what we're going to be doing, I kind of make a list by subject for each child and find the best options for each one. If you have multiple children, there's a lot of things you can use for multiple ages and levels, like history and science can often work for multiple grade levels, and then you can save money that way as well, and time. Another thing to consider is over planning. Most years, in the past, not so much now, but I used to overbuy and overplan and think that I could do twice as much than I realistically could get done. So I highly recommend trying to keep things simple. And if it feels too simple after you get started, you could always add in a little more. But when you start out with too much, that'll often overwhelm you and your kids, and then you'll feel like a failure when you don't get it all in. And so simplify, don't overplan. All right, we're on to tip number 7. This is budgeting. Budgeting is a huge part of choosing a homeschool curriculum because we all have a budget, right? And we want to stick to it. If you don't have a really strict budget, you're going to have a lot more fun. And you can just, the sky's the limit. But most of us have a budget that we need to stick to. And so this is going to really greatly affect your choices. Total up the amount it's going to cost you for your list. The cost is way too high, look for places that you can cut costs. Maybe you find a language arts curriculum that's a little less. Maybe you go to a used bookstore and buy the books used instead. Or there are some curriculum sales Facebook groups, I'm pretty sure, or some swap groups, or people will send it to you for free, you just pay shipping. There's a lot of things like that you can find online that are great. And there also are a lot of free homeschool options that I'll touch on a little bit. But if you just do a quick Google search for free homeschool, you're going to find so many amazing resources There's a couple of bloggers that I follow that have compiled lists of free homeschool options. Free Homeschool Deals is a website that collects them. There's the word I'm looking for. And I mentioned earlier, easy peasy all-in-one homeschooling. I'm pretty sure that that is... Alexa, stop. Alexa heard me and thought I was talking to her, but I wasn't. So easy peasy all-in-one homeschooling is another one that a lot of people like and use, and that is all free. Okay, public funding is something you can look into here for budgeting. And homeschooling is not a tax write-off in most places. There might be a few states that offer that, but most places it's not going to be an option. So there are some options that you can get funding through charter schools, or they're called umbrella schools often. So if you're not opposed to public funding, this is a good option to look into. It's something that we do in our family, and they will vary state by state, so you'll have to look into it in your area. The one in our state is called K-12. Sorry. It's called My Tech High. K-12 is an online free public school option. So some states offer that for free as well that you can look into also. But the umbrella schools, typically what happens is you enroll your child through a charter school, but you're not taking them to that school. They will just give you a certain amount of funding per child to use to buy only secular curriculum, and then you just have to reimburse, or they reimburse you, and you'll have to do like a weekly or monthly learning log type thing to just show your progress in learning. It's a really, really great way to get some extra funding for your homeschool. Buying used is also great, and I mentioned that before, but there's a lot of great places to buy used curriculum. Look through local homeschool groups and local classified ads. Used bookstores, group discounts like Homeschool Buyers Co-op is a good one. You can ask in some local homeschool groups and online in Facebook groups. Our area does a yearly homeschool curriculum sale where anyone in the area can come and they can list their curriculum for sale, and you can all just go and you can shop at this big used curriculum sale. It's a really cool thing that I've participated in a lot of times. And check your library. They may have a lot of the books and things that you might need as well, or some comparable options that will work well. And interlibrary loan is a good tool to use for this as well. You can use a lot of audiobooks as well for this, and there's some good options there. Tip number 8 is to consult your kids. I always love to talk through the options with my children. Some of my kids have very, very strong opinions on what they want to learn about, and some of them couldn't care less, and I do it all for them and choose it all, not do their school, but choose it all for them. And so you're gonna be able to see know what your child is like and how much input they're gonna want to have in what they're learning that year. So before you start buying, talk to them a lot about that, about the types of books they want to read or the type of science they want to learn this year or whatever it may be. But involving them has made my kids a lot more excited to start their upcoming school year. They love to choose history and science and literature books, and they love to just really, be involved in the extra things that I'm buying as well for them. The science experiment kits or the tech stuff that we do or anything along those lines. They're gonna love having a part in choosing. We like to buy new learning games and activities like that each year just to kind of get them excited about the things coming up. Tip number 9, make your choice and then stop looking. Okay, this is really, really important, and I think it's one of the most important things. Once you have taken your time and done your research and chosen something, it's probably a good choice. So stop stressing about it and start using it, and then stop looking and stop reading all the other reviews unless you start using it and it fails miserably and everyone hates it and there's tons of tears and crying. If you get to that point, I'll let you look again. But if you don't get to that point, then stop looking and just be okay with where you are. Stop comparisons and stop worrying, because it's gonna work. So what happens all too often as you're going along, everything's working fine in your language arts program, and you're reading this new blog, and she talks about this shiny, beautiful new curriculum and gives it a glowing review, and suddenly you think, I have to have that. Mine isn't just like that at all. Mine is terrible. And so you think you need to switch. don't do it. Don't believe those thoughts in your head. Just be okay with where you are. And maybe next year, when you have it in your budget again to buy new curriculum, next year you can try that new shiny curriculum if you'd like to. So just don't get sucked into those self-doubts and those comparisons, because it's gonna always be there. The grass is gonna always look greener on the other side, and the doubts are gonna always creep in, and it's gonna be just like middle school and what kind of shoes you're wearing all over again. So just stick to what you researched and thought out and planned and be okay with it. I have fallen prey to that way too many times, believe me. So I want you to know that it's not gonna fix everything if you switch curriculums, and it's not gonna make everything beautiful. It's just gonna be a little different, and you'll have to start over, learning all over again, and there might be more tears with this one than there were with the last one. But if you've done your research, you probably found a good option, and it's gonna be all right. So tip number 10, moving right along, is to be okay with adjusting. I know I said to stop looking in that last tip, but sometimes something just really doesn't work well for your family. Or sometimes, if you can't spend another penny, you can modify a curriculum that you purchased to make it fit. So maybe you hate the teacher manual. I am kind of guilty of never using teacher manuals, unless I have to. I'll usually buy them because I think, oh, I need that. And then we get going, and as soon as we get going, I'm like, I don't need that. We know what to do, or I want to do it my way instead. So I'm pretty guilty of that, and I'm okay with it. I'm gonna own it. So, but if something's not working very well, just adjust it and make it work, or throw out some pieces of the pieces that they hate of it, or add in a little extra of this that you're missing from it. It's okay, because you're the teacher, and I don't always love everything I buy. There are days, or there are years, that we buy something that just is a total failure, and that's okay. Just throw it out or adjust it to make it fit for you. If your child is fighting and crying and is miserable every single day that they have to open up that book and work on it, I usually will just stop using it and find a comparable option that will work for us. There's no sense in continuing a fight every single day. And if you're not getting something done because it's too parent intensive, I mentioned that again earlier, look for a simpler option so you're constantly not beating yourself up for not finishing. I do that to myself. So if your list is never completed at the end of the day, then edit your list so you don't feel constant guilt. Be okay with removing a few of the extras that you thought you needed. Maybe the Latin roots are not working out this year. Throw them out the window. That's okay. Maybe you don't get all the science experiments done that you want to. That's okay. Read some books to them about it instead. Whatever it may be that's not working, just adjust it and stop feeling guilty. I am usually a pretty frugal person, because when there's a lot of things to spend money on, you don't want to waste it, right? So if I spend good money on something, I really want to get my money's worth. So sometimes it's really hard to stop using something that you spent a lot of money on. But think about the fact that you can sell used curriculum to others, and they'll be very excited to get it for less money than they could have bought it for otherwise. So there are ways to get some money back from something if you had to stop using it. So in conclusion, just gonna sum up those 10 tips one more time for you. Number 1, picture what you want your homeschool to look like. Number 2, determine what kind of learners you are teaching. Number 3, choose a homeschool style. Number 4, research it. Number 5, read reviews. Number 6, write a master list of the things that you want to have. We've got number 7, budget. Number 8, consult your kids. Number 9, make your choice and stop looking. And number 10, be okay with adjusting. So I hope this has helped you in making your choices, or at least knowing where to begin. It's okay to have fear and to have doubt, but know that you can do this, and you can do it well, and it's not as hard as you might think. Good luck making the best choice for your family. Thanks for watching. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.